afternoon and thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, got it. Sorry for that. Good afternoon and thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today and attend this so informative conference. I'm Sister Michelle Loisel, daughter of charity. My ministry these past years allows me to journey with survivors of human trafficking. Presently, I am serving in the board of US Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking. Some housekeeping information before we begin, I guess. Please keep writing your questions in the chat box and Teresa will answer at the end of the presentation. I have now the great honor to present our next speaker, Teresa Flores. Teresa is a human trafficking survivor, best-selling author. Mrs. Flores is the program director for the US Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking, a faith-based national network that offers education, supports access to survivor services, and engages in advocacy to eradicate human trafficking. She has been a licensed social worker for over 30 years and was appointed to the Ohio Attorney General's Human Trafficking Commission in 2009 and has testified before the Ohio House and Senate in support of human trafficking legislation. Her efforts were a major part of the success of these bills being passed into laws. Additionally, the Teresa Flores law was passed in Michigan that eliminates the statute of limitation for children who have been trafficked. Flores is a survivor of domestic child sex trafficking and was sold in an underground crime ring in an upper middle class suburb outside Detroit from the time she was 15 to 17 years old. She has researched the mental and physical health problems of over 200 domestic trafficking survivors and has hosted over 100 women at survivor retreats. She has received many awards, including the 2017 Loyal Women of the University of Dayton's Alumni Association 2013 Christian Service Award for her work with SOAP, Save Our Adolescents from Prostitution. In January 2012, at the State of the State address, Mrs. Flores received the Courage Award from the Governor of Ohio for her work in human trafficking. Mrs. Flores has published 5 books, The Sacred Bath and Slave Across the Street in the UK and US, and Slavery in the Land of the Free, a student's guide to modern day slavery. The 10-year anniversary edition is a rare glimpse into what trauma of trafficking has upon a person and the struggle it takes to heal. The audio version of her memoir was nominated for the 2011 Audi Award, being in the top 5 of all memoirs and biographies, and also has been on the Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller list for ebooks several times. Mrs. Flores also has a very popular TED Talk. And I can tell you, I just saw this TED Talk this morning, and I encourage you to do the same when you can. Save our adolescents from prostitution. And now, Teresa, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk more about human trafficking survivors and how to work with the survivors. So we did it last night, right? We talked a little bit about best practices. of working with survivors and the challenge that it can be working with survivors. But what we're going to do today is go a little bit more in depth and discuss the retreats that we hold for survivors, the do's and don'ts and how difficult it is. So some of the slideshow might be a little repetitive to last night, but we will get a little bit deeper into it. So I'm going to share my screen and let's see, therapeutic retreats, here we go. Can everyone see that? Yes. Can you see that? Sister Michelle, can you see that?
I think you need to open. It's not open, my dear.
You don't see this?
Oh, wait, I see your screen, but the therapeutic retreat is not open.
So you're not seeing, oh.
Maybe you need to click twice.
You don't see that then?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, let me get out of there then. Escape there. Let's see. Okay.
Teresa, if you try to open on your screen first, maybe that will be, I don't know, a better idea. And share after. If you open and share.
There, do you see that?
We see the same thing, all your icons.
The icons. Do you see this? Where it says soap, journey of grace?
Yes, we see the icons, all the icons.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to start this.
Teresa,
yes.
What you need to do is open the document you want to share with us first on your desktop.
Got it.
Stop sharing your screen.
Yes.
Then
stop sharing your screen and go back to whatever it is and open it up. And then once it's open, go back to your Attendify thing or Zoom, and then share screen and pick it.
Okay, so you're not seeing my screen right now, right?
No.
Okay, great. Good. Okay. Oops. We're getting there. Okay, how about now?
Yes.
Yay.
Okay.
Now just click on the tab that says slide view, because now we're seeing, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, yay.
Perfect.
Sorry. Okay. So yesterday, we discussed the reality of what a survivor has to go through, what she goes through. And if somebody can mute there, I can mute you there. So, we've talked with survivors, and they typically have to have sex with about 6 men a night. That is 7 nights a week, right? 365 days a year. Can you even fathom, 6 men a night for every night? There's no days off. There's no sick time. It's a lot. They have a quota that they have to make, and they have to do anything to make that quota, or they're hurt very badly. This is very violent. So many will die of murder. We don't know the percentage of the death, but we know it's very high, of suicide and then overdose, even afterwards. So the recovery rate is very, very low for this. A lot of times they will get out of the life, is what we call it, but then they'll go back into it because they don't have a good support system. We've been doing some research and asking survivors, what is it that you need? And many of them need aftercare. So they'll go into a program, maybe for 6 months, maybe a year or 2, but when they get out, they have nothing. They don't have family. And so that aftercare piece is really essential for continued healing. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is that aftercare. You saw this yesterday. This is girl up here on the upper left hand corner. Her name is Grace. and she's 15. And then that last photo where she's 17 down here and passed away after this. You know, I show this picture to a lot of people so that they can understand the brevity of this. You know, if she came into school, right, or to a nurse's, to an emergency room, you can clearly see that she's going through something horrible. You can see the drug abuse from her teeth down here when she has the white shirt on. You can see that somebody's beating her up. You can tell she's probably doesn't smell good, right? She probably hasn't had a shower in weeks. Her clothing might be inappropriate for the time of year. She's malnourished. She's not eating 3, you know, regular meals a day. And you can just see, you know, all of the trauma, layers and layers of trauma that she's going through. Now, this is a 15, 16, 17-year-old girl. It just makes me so angry. These are actually mug shots of every time she was arrested. Who was helping her? Who was saying, hey, can I help you? And if there was somebody that said, can I help you? She probably said, no, I'm fine. And they're like, okay, good, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, right? And they gave up. So that's why when we talked yesterday about a lot of times survivors are angry, is because people didn't try. Look at her. Does it look like anybody tried to help her? It just got worse and worse. And this is over a 2-year period of time. So when you think about what a survivor has to go through to heal, I want you to always remember this picture, because it takes us a lifetime to heal emotionally from these scars. So again, yesterday we talked about, and I'm not sure if all of you are on here or not, but how much extreme violence there is in human trafficking, being punched, being beaten, you know, nobody asks for that, being strangled. A lot of forensic nurses are working with getting legislation passed about strangulation, and then abused by persons of authority. That could be a police officer, that could be a teacher or a parent. Let's see. Oops. And then physically, 99% have reported physical problems. And these continue even after you're out of trafficking, if you're lucky enough to. Neurological problems, that's from being beaten in the head, kicked in the head. You know, that has lasting effect. A lot of times we talk about, you know, well, she told me one story and she told somebody else a different story. Well, a lot of times you're just putting the pieces together as you're going. The head trauma is huge. We talk about athletes, right, with brain concussions. They've got nothing on survivors when it comes to concussions. Gastrointestinal problems. I like to concentrate on this one because after survivors are out, like I said, they have a lot of physical problems, and healthcare is essential for survivors afterwards. You know, like when you were younger and you went to go take a test and your stomach gets, you know, in butterflies and you don't feel good. That happens every time a survivor is in a room and a man opens up the door every half hour. So can you imagine what that does to your stomach, the lasting effects when you're in such a stressful environment 24 hours a day? And then dental, this one surprises a lot of people. Half of the survivors had dental problems. A lot of times they're being hit in the face, in the mouth, they're losing teeth. And it also because of drug usage. They're not brushing their teeth twice a day, even once a day. They're not going to the dentist. So we see a lot of survivors with dental issues. And we had a 35-year-old that needed a complete dentures. And substance abuse obviously is going to be huge. Now, not everybody is involved in or has substance abuse. I wasn't, I did not have that, but I was fortunate because it was much, a long time ago. Today, we know that if you have a drug problem in your area, you also have a human trafficking problem. If you have a lot of human trafficking in your area, you have a lot of drug problems in your area. They kind of go hand in hand, unfortunately. So yesterday we talked about why survivors might not tell you they need your help. They are terrified. It's like you have to tip the scales, right? So if I tell you what's going on, I have to believe that you're going to help me. I have to trust you that, you know, you're going to follow through and you're going to help me out of it. So it's really a very delicate balancing act on if I can tell you or not. So these are some of the reasons why survivors won't tell you. Because they're bonded to him. They're in love with the trafficker. Like what happened for, do you guys remember Patty Hearst? That's where we came up with the Stockholm syndrome, because when Patty Hearst was kidnapped, she actually began to fall in love with one of the kidnappers, and then started to participate in the bank robberies. And then when they got arrested, she got arrested too, even though she had been kidnapped by them. Is everybody familiar with that story? So that's how we got the word Stockholm syndrome, where you're actually bonded to the trafficker. And sometimes the trafficker can be the parent. So obviously you're going to be bonded to them. You don't want to tell anybody and risk what's going to happen to you. So sometimes they isolate you. I never saw another survivor, another victim of trafficking when I was being trafficked. But afterwards, I do know of another that was getting groomed for it. So it's very common to be isolated from others as well. Again, like yesterday, 40% are trafficked by family. We have quite a few survivors that we work with in Michigan in our support group, and many of them were trafficked familial. And now this group of survivors have the hardest time of recovery, in my opinion. We have a young lady who's probably 45. She'd never had a birthday cake before. She got her master's degree in social work. But she doesn't talk to any family. She has taken herself out of her family, and rightly so. But like when her car was breaking down, who's she going to call to get her help, right? She doesn't have, where's she going to go for Thanksgiving dinner? So we have a lot of survivors that don't have that after support. They're working on their healing, they've become educated, but they don't have that, family support. And you really need to have that in order to heal completely. Let's see. So again, we talked about this one a little bit yesterday: identity, shame, and guilt and loss. A lot of survivors want to know, can you imagine what the number one question, I want you to write this in your chat. What is the number one question you think survivors have after having been trafficked? What do you think a question is that we would have? Oops, I went back. Can anybody imagine? Oh, I can't see the chat from here on this one, so I'll look at those later then. But I'll let you write those in and then I'll tell you what it is later. So a lot of survivors believe that it's their fault that they got trafficked, that they did something. They made a choice. I made the choice to get in this guy's car. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I made the choice to accept the pop that he gave me that was laced with drugs, not knowing that. I made the choice to say, okay, I will earn back these pictures because that's what you're forcing me to do. So a lot of times when we're working with survivors, we have to make them realize that it wasn't your fault. You chose, but you really didn't know because you were a child, right? You were put in this position. So when I talk with high school students, I always say, always ask what if? What if he's not taking me home? What if this pop is laced with something? If you ask yourself what if before, you will prevent yourself from getting into a lot of trouble usually. So okay, so There are multiple layers of trauma. When we're dealing with survivors and trying to help them heal, you need to understand that it is multiple layers over and over again. Many children that became trafficked had very high ACEs scores. And so I hope you know what an ACE score is. It determines the dysfunction of your childhood. Were any of your parents incarcerated? Were you neglected? What kinds of things did you see growing up that weren't normal? So each thing is given on a point system, each ACE, and then that determines what your ACE score is. So children that have high scores generally they're going to see trauma. They're going to see things all around them, and makes it worse. It interferes with the ability to perform daily tasks. So even the simplest task to you or me might be very difficult for a survivor, not just because she's never learned what it is, but she's never done that on a daily basis. So psychological examples of trauma. There's living in persistent fear. Can you imagine living in fear 24 hours a day? Many of these traffickers, whether it be a family member or not, they brainwash their victims. It is like being in a cult. It is very, very similar to being in a cult. Many survivors will experience anxiety and panic attacks, especially when they're triggered by something. And so one of the things that is very important to teach survivors is, what are your triggers? A lot of them won't know in the beginning, but it's really important to have them identify what is it that triggers them, so then they can try and find out some good tools, some coping tools for that. So say it could be a smell. One survivor said, like, anytime I smell Old English cologne or aftershave, it sends her off into a tizzy. Being in an elevator, closed with a lot of men. For myself, it might be like going into a Middle Eastern store or hearing Arabic music is a trigger for me. So a lot of them, they need to learn their triggers. Many survivors suffer depression, and then that can even go into bipolar. It can go into personality disorder, but they really need to, many times, to take antidepressants because of the PTSD. Substance abuse, we already talked about. Eating disorders are very common as well, and it can go either way, to a bulimia, where you're eating and then throwing it up, or it can actually an anorexia, because you're starving your body because you don't feel worth it. But most of the times I'm seeing is the overeating. I think that's very common with the survivors, because food is comfort, right? And so they overeat because they're trying to comfort themselves. This is what I see most often, is the overeating. And they, partially it was because when they were trafficked, they weren't given 3 nutritious meals a day. So they're like, oh my gosh, I have access to food, I'm going to eat everything. And then again, I think it's also a mechanism, a coping mechanism, where if they add weight to themselves, then nobody will want them. So I think sometimes it's subconscious as well. Like I said before, they're very angry. They've experienced a lot of violence, and a lot of failure, people that have failed them. So because of that, a lot of times they also will have suicidal ideation. And in my book, I talk a little bit, my 10-year anniversary, about that as well. When you feel so hopeless, you don't know what else there is to do. So when we talk about meeting the needs of survivors, somebody that's experienced such trauma, they have a lot of needs to be met. First and most important is they need to feel safe. And if that's in a counseling situation, where they're sitting at in the room, can they see the door? Very important. When I go to a hotel, I always choose the bed farthest from the door. So there's certain things that they're going to want to feel safe. And maybe just ask them that, hey, which chair would you prefer? Where would you like to sit, or where would you like to sleep? Giving them those choices to feel safe. We talked earlier about they need to feel like they can trust you, and that comes with time. That's not automatic. A lot of people get upset when they work with survivors because they feel, hey, I'm giving them everything. I'm doing all of this for them, and they're not being appreciative. And it's not that they're not being appreciative. It's just that they have to learn to trust you first. And then those are the other needs we talked about: medical needs, substance abuse counseling. And really, it's just so important just to walk side by side with them. Don't be like, oh, here's your doctor's appointment. Go ahead and go to this. Take them to that. Go, say, hey, would you like me to come in the room with you? Try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. And then some of their behaviors. These are a lot of fun. A lot of survivors we work with, they complain a lot. They don't know how to really handle life. And so complaints because they just don't know how to cope. They can be very confrontational with each other, with others. They're testing you. That's what that is that if I push you away, the more I push you away, are you really going to be there? Or do you keep coming back? We want you to keep coming back, all right? But if we push you away and you don't come back, we're like, see, I knew it. I can't depend on this person. So many survivors will be confrontational and push you away because it's a test to see if you really do mean what you say. I don't know the impression recovery. I'm not sure what that one is. A lot of times they just don't know. They don't, like I said, they don't know how to write a thank you card. So we can't expect them to do that without teaching them. We can't assume that they know. Somebody said yesterday, how to use a fork and a knife, or what spoon is for what. We can't assume those things. And then they've had that trauma over and over again. So it's like you keep taking hits, and so we have to be able to build them up from that. So, and if you don't know how to work with the survivor, if you don't know how to handle one of these issues, refer it out, all right? Find another counselor, find a survivor like myself and ask us questions like, hey, we're seeing this, what should we do? So just, ask, there's a big enough community in this that we can be able to ask other people for help on working with survivors. So there's a lot of things that are difficult. Healing is very difficult, but it's actually really necessary. The biggest thing is survivors do not feel they're worth anything. They feel they're worthless. They have been told over and over again by their pimp that you're worth nothing. Nobody cares about you. All right. And so you hear that over and over again. Maybe think of like an abused child, right? You hear that all the time and you start to believe it. So we have to build them back up. We have to convince survivors that they're worth it. And that's a hard thing to do. The way that we do it is we just pour into them. I mean, they have to have counseling and everything too, but we pour into them over and over again. They definitely need ongoing trauma-informed trained therapists. Sometimes we've seen people that are Christian therapists, but they're not really a therapist or a Christian counselor. I wouldn't go for that. I would say it needs to be a therapist that's a licensed professional that's been trained in trauma. I mean, if that Christian counselor has that, then great, right? We need to talk about with them sexual assault, because this is a form of sexual assault, right? Over and over again, daily. We need to talk to them about post-traumatic stress disorder, right? About eating disorders, about substance abuse. So there's several different types of therapy that survivors have used and gotten very good results from. EMDR, which is it's a rapid eye movement type of therapy. Most of the survivors that I've talked to have gone through that and really loved it. Again, I'm not recommending or not recommending certain kinds of therapy. These are ones that different survivors have said that work. It's not going to be like it's going to work for everybody. Okay. CBT is very helpful. I know that is one that I've used before. And it's just a reframing of comments. So if I say, well, you know, he always does this to me, then the therapist teaches you to say, well, does he really always do this? Let's watch our words. Like, is it always or is it sometimes? Oh, well, it's sometimes. Okay, so it's not always, sometimes this happens. So it's statements like that. Tapping is another one, especially survivors that have a lot of anxiety, maybe be borderline. They've learned how to tap to reduce that. And then DBT is another one that is a really intense type of therapy for people with personality disorders. I will give you an example, and it hurts my soul to tell you this, but we do have several survivors that have DID. DID is the new term for multiple personalities. And one of our survivors has many personalities, and it breaks my soul because she was normal before. She was a completely normal little girl. And because these men did horrible things to her since a little girl over and over again, it actually broke her brain. It broke her mind, and it broke it off into many pieces. And to me, that's not excusable. When I think of her, it motivates me to really work at this even harder. They need a lot of times occupational therapy is very beneficial to survivors. And I don't mean like finding a job occupation. I mean occupational therapy where it's fine motor touch. So you think of working with whipped cream, shaving cream, sand, things that are textile, getting them because touch is numb to them. So if you can imagine having to have, you know, sex with 10 to 15 men a night, you leave your body. So you don't really feel the touch anymore. You become numb to it. So we have to get them back in their body and to be able to recognize good touch, which is another reason why we always do massages with them as well. We like to even do facials with them too, to learn about how touch feels and to get back into their body in a safe way. Let's see, support systems, healthy boundaries. A lot do not know boundaries, never had boundaries. There are no boundaries when you're being trafficked, right? You're not allowed that luxury. So teaching them about space, right? How far or how close are they to somebody? They might not like it when someone's really close into their face. So being able to teach them, it's okay to take a step backwards. You know, you don't have to be angry and be like, get out of my face, you know, teaching them, if you're uncomfortable, just take a step back. You know, there's certain things you can do. Again, basic living's finances. They've never had a checking account, right? They don't know how to do online banking. Even if they get a check, I mean, what are they going to do? If they got a job, you got to cash that check, right? They have a driver's license, an ID. So really, really back to the basics. And like I said yesterday, play is really important. We took a group of survivors to the zoo. They had never been to the zoo before. And I'm not talking 18-year-old survivors. I'm talking 30, 40, 50-year-old survivors. I showed this one yesterday. This is some Tai Chi. I also like to teach them kickboxing, Qigong, yoga, Reiki with them, techniques that are going to help them calm themselves when they get triggered or they're in a situation where they're uncomfortable. These practices are very, very important for them to do, and they really embrace it and want to learn it. And they say this definitely helps. They use this again later. So healing is so important for survivors. You know, it's just so important to know that they're not broken. A couple different phrases I hear a lot are, well, they were broken and we have to put them back together again. No, you know, we have some clinks, you know, some little chips out of our armor or out of our teacup, but we're not broken. But we definitely need to work on it. A lot of times we hear that people say they're the voiceless and they don't have a voice. Well, we do. We just need to learn how to use it again. So, so empowering survivors is very important. We went over these yesterday. Healing the mind, body, and soul. That's how I work with this. Healing the mind is we offer classes on, and I'll show you later here, the different classes that we teach them, right? Healing the body, like I said, the massages, the Reiki, nutrition. A lot of don't eat properly, right? Going to the medical doctors, a physical activity. You know, many of them have never ridden a bike. So doing a lot of physical work with them. They love the self-defense classes, right? And then healing the soul. Again, that's where we use our yoga. We've had classes on healing through Christ, getting your armor on, and I'm trying to think some of our others. But the soul one is probably my favorite one to do with the survivors. So healing requires a lot. One of the most beneficial classes that we offer with survivors to heal is our art therapy. We have several art therapists that come to our retreats and they do lots of different kinds of activities. And what is a beautiful thing is like the survivors are working on painting their masks, or they're putting together jewelry, or doing a stained art piece. And they're focused on the piece and they're looking down, but there's other survivor sisters with them. There's the art therapist, and they're talking freely. And it's a great way to get your mind off of what's going on when you're having a hard time and just express yourself creatively. I can say that word. So really that the creative piece is so important. And then at the end of the retreats, they bring their piece to the final ceremony and they show everybody what they made. And they're so proud of it. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. So art therapy is really essential. It's probably one of, well, it's in the top 3 of their favorite things about our retreats. I believe in working with animals as much as possible. We have started bringing emotional support dogs to our retreats when we can. And, you know, that dog, you just love on that dog, right? Or that cat. They don't talk back to you. And it's just unconditional love. So animals, we're seeing a lot more survivors getting emotional support dogs. The problem is they're very, very expensive. And you have to have extensive training. So it would be really nice to be able to offer scholarships for survivors in getting support dogs. It's such a great thing to do. They need to heal by getting jobs, you know, let's empower them financially. There's nothing more rewarding than going to a job and getting a paycheck. They've never done that. So getting them those job skills to set them up for success. All right. Many will be unrealistic in their dreams and goals of jobs. I want to be an airline stewardess, but maybe they have some disabilities. All right. Or I'm going to open up my own restaurants and they don't even really know how to cook, you know? So really talking to them, getting some skill learning surveys. I always do a personality index with them. And at the end of it, it generally says like, what kinds of jobs would you be good at with your personality? So starting there, but things that will give them confidence. They might not even know how to fill out an application, you know, and who are they going to put as a reference in past job history. So obviously you need trusting, loving relationships in our advanced retreat. We talk about how is it possible to have a healthy sexual relationship. Many want to have sex again. Many want to have a partner, and they just don't allow themselves that. And so that's a hard, tough subject to talk about, but it's something we need to talk about sexuality when we're talking about healing for survivors. And as you see in the last one here, we do foot massages, we're foot washing ceremonies. We do healthy touch with them. We do a drum circle, and the drum circle is one of their favorites because you can pound that drum and get out all of your anger, but you're also drumming with your other sisters. You're also being a part of something. And that's one of their fun things to do as well. Here's our high tea. That we serve these survivors. They each get one of these teacups and saucers to take home with them to remember. I have about 10 of them sitting here on my desk that I've collected. And it's really nice because one of our survivors, when we got back home, I saw she posted on Facebook a picture of herself and her daughter, her 7-year-old daughter, having tea. It gave her, the idea to have tea with her daughter. She would never have thought to do that. And it was a very special moment for the two of them. So we have several kinds of retreats. That's how we focus. We have a support group for survivors each month in Michigan. And many of them drive 2.5 hours each way to come to the support group. We do a lot of field trips with them, but we also hold retreats. And I know the U.S. Catholic Sisters were talking about doing a retreat next year for survivors as well. We've had one-day retreats, weekend retreats, and advanced retreats. So a one-day is just kind of a local event, maybe going to the zoo, all right? So it's like a field trip. It's a fun activities. It's good for the survivors. You can have about up to 100 survivors do something like this, and the cost is usually pretty low. We've done a picnic at the beach. We've done clothes fairs, dinner out, things like that. So it's pretty easy to do a one-dayer. And then typically we hold a weekend retreat every year. This is for new survivors, and I don't mean new as in they've just become a survivor. I mean they're new, they've never come on a retreat before. And we typically have about 24 survivors. It's, you want enough that's that will fit in a big circle that you can share and it's not taking forever. Sometimes we'll invite a few of our other survivors who've already gone to one back again. But I don't recommend any more than 30 for this because, like I said, everybody goes around and shares, and it would get quite long if you do more than that. It's pretty expensive to run a retreat. You have to pay for the facility and the food and the programming. So generally, it's maybe about $100 a night per person for a retreat, and that's usually just the room. The meals are usually in addition to that. We get lots of things donated. So you can see that picture there. These are bags that 31 Gifts donated. They all get a blanket. They love their comfy blankets. And then the items inside of it are just things that people donate to us: toiletries, journals, Bibles, pens, and Beanie Babies. They all love their Beanie Babies. And so these are items that we put on their bed for when they arrive. And we also get cards that people have written to them, encouraging them, saying, we're praying for you this weekend. And we put those on their bed as well. We offer lots of activities during our weekend retreat, but they also have choices. They have a choice of it's like a conference. You choose which session you want to go to, but there are sessions that everybody has to go to as well. These can be 1 to 3 nights. We've preferred to do them in a convent, like a conference center. We've done it at the Adrian Dominican Sisters. They have a beautiful conference center, retreat center there. We've done it at St. Teresa's in Columbus, Ohio retreat center. But we've also done it in a hotel, and we've done it at a resort too. So we do not do it in campgrounds. And we are very careful of where we go with survivors. We don't do it in, we don't do bunk beds with them. A lot have physical disabilities and are larger and older. So it's very hard to get up on a top bunk. I know I can't. So we are very careful on how many we put in a room, things like that. And then for the advanced retreats, so we had a 5-day advanced retreat that was for very advanced survivors, but that still needed healing. And so in that one, we talk about very triggering, in-depth subjects like about sex. We talk about writing yourself a love letter, who are you, identity things. And we've tried to push them out of their comfort zone, trying new things that they've never done before. When we did this before, it was at an all-inclusive resort in Punta Cana. So here we are talking about difficult subjects, right? And we're talking about hard things. And yet then it's like, okay, let's go to the pool and who wants a cocktail? So, you have to be able to be at that level to do that. So, and this is good for smaller numbers of people. I think we had 15 survivors for this. But I'm looking forward to doing an advanced retreat that is an alumni survivor retreat. We've had 75 women go through our retreats that all want to come back and do it again. And so can you imagine 75 altogether for a weekend of learning? So that is what I've been trying to plan for next year. Let's see, did I skip one? So here is one of our survivors from Toledo. She's painting her mask. And what they do is they paint on the outside what the world sees of them. And then on the inside, what are they feeling? What is going on the inside of them? And then you see our amazing drum circle where they just cut loose and have fun. And then another survivor here at the zoo touching a stingray. So you can see they're all ages. So we are very strict. We've learned our lesson many times on who can come to retreats and who's ready and who's not. They must have been out of the life. So they're not currently working on the streets or whatever you want to call it. They must have been out of the life for at least 2 years. And we verify through an application that they were trafficked. Sometimes we've had it where they were not trafficked. Maybe they worked in a strip club, but they weren't trafficked. And so we differentiate between that. They have to be at least 18 years of age and have some sort of support system. We want them to be able to have somebody to go back to be able to process everything. And we ask them what their emotional health is. If they say fair, this is probably not the best for you. Like, we need you to be ready to be able to take this to a new level. So we look for survivors that want to be thrivers, not in your current victim mentality. I hope that makes sense to everybody. And then we check their references, because there's been survivors where their therapist or someone that says, I don't think they're quite ready for this. And we really appreciate when people are honest and tell us that. And then we use a lot of volunteers. We are very, very picky about our volunteers. They have to be all female, because this is very triggering. And we train every volunteer prior to it starting. We train them on how to be trauma informed. One of the most important questions or the requirements of our volunteers is we demand that they don't ask the survivor her story. So what happened to you? That happens all the time to me, to survivors. And when you're there in a safe space, you don't want that. If she might volunteer to tell her their story, fine, that's great. But we require that the volunteer does not ask somebody their story. And lately we're starting to use survivors too to run sessions as well. But again, the volunteers need to be in good emotional health too. We don't want somebody that's, I just have a good heart and I just want to do this. They need to have a skill. They need to be trained for this as well. Again, another one of our pictures of the drum circle. So the activities, and I know we're running a little bit behind here. See, these are just some of the different activities that we do: banking, boundaries, interviewing, haircuts, trauma and health, of the foot washing, healing with angels. We have people that come, and these are all sessions that people come and volunteer to do. So what we've learned is that some aren't ready to go through a retreat. Some are still really living in their victimhood, and they might not all get along. All right. So these are definitely some of the things that you really have to be careful of. I have been attacked by a survivor when we weren't able to do what she wanted us to do. She wanted some medication and we were not allowed to do that. So we've had a survivor break down a door before because she was angry. And so we've had some, bad situations happen. We've had survivors go to the emergency room. And so we've learned very hard through the last 6 years of what works and doesn't work. And this is my dear friend, Cherie. She is a survivor advocate in Boston, and she got to do a great self-defense class, which they love. And she got to just scream at this guy and hit him, and it was really empowering. And interesting enough, a few months later, she was in a park and had to be able to fight for herself as well. But she felt 100% positive that she could handle that, and she did. So it is really nice. And this is pictures from our Punta Cana retreat. The woman on the right was convicted to life in prison for killing her pimp. And after 17 years of being incarcerated, she finally got out. And she's a wonderful giver. A lot of survivors will give to other people, but they don't pour into themselves. So we were able to pour into her all weekend. And it was a wonderful, beautiful, I love the picture, her smile on there. It shows you what healing really can look like. So that's it for me. I'm going to stop this. Okay. So what questions do you guys have? Oops, I can't hear you, Michelle. Let me unmute you. Michelle, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you are invited to write some questions in the chat box. Yeah. And I think you have already one, Teresa. You talk about DBT. What is it?
DBT. I always call it diabolical, but I think it's diabetical therapy. I know, right? Therapy.
No, it's dialectical behavioral therapy.
Yeah, I always want to say diabolical. Yeah, and you have to be, the very few people are trained in that type of therapy. So, but it is something that's very, very intense. So it's one thing that some survivors have used. And somebody did get the question right on here as well. Kathleen said, why me? That is the question that we ask ourselves, or that if we were able to confront our traffickers, the one question we would ask is, why me? Why did you choose me? And that then affects our identity, right? And most of us will never get that question answered. So we kind of have to live with that, which makes it tough. Yeah.
Is any other questions?
Teresa, back to the DBT, the diabolical. Is it a word thing, like talking, or is it like, I know what tapping is,
yeah,
and EDMR, but when you say it's intense, but what's the protocol?
I don't know, because it's like I said, only like my daughter's getting trained in it. He's a doctor of psychology, and there's like one person in the all state of New Jersey that's trained in this. So it's a pretty intense. I think generally you do a 40-hour a week type of a therapy for that. It's not something that you go to that's once a week for an hour. So it's a very intense, demanding type of therapy. Yeah, that's all I know about it.
But what does it look like? Is it talking?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. It's talking.
Is it? I don't get it.
Yeah,
talking. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I just know it's one of the types. So
sounds diabolical to me.
Definitely.
Sounds diabolical.
Yeah. It is, I think, more for people that have a borderline personality, Some of them are the personality disorders. Some are the tougher ones to heal. So
it's a cognitive therapy, you know, it's for mood therapy, etc.
mood therapy. What other questions do you have?
I wonder,
Well,
have you ever used water therapy, like, you know, hot water, whether it's baths or jacuzzis, you know, the hot water healing therapies?
Yeah.
Or I saw you had them by the beach.
Yep.
Have you seen the power of water and healing?
Yeah, we do that with the foot washing. I'm a really big advocate of water in ceremony. So we do the foot washing. We also have done it where it's a bowl and everybody is given dissolving paper, and we ask them to write down the one thing that they just want to release, to get rid of. We do a lot of releasing ceremonies. And they write it down and then they put it in the water and they stir it. They don't know that it's dissolving paper, and they put it in the water and it just goes away. We've done that with the ocean as well. We've done the candle, the floating candle that goes out onto the pond and just goes away. So we do a lot of water type ceremonies. I'm always looking for more ceremony type things to do. We've done the floating candle balloon, you know, that goes up in the air, and they just let that go. So we do a lot of different kinds of ceremonies with them as well, because those are the things they remember. But yeah, I'm a big advocate of water healing. Anybody else?
And immersion.
Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah, I mean, we're not baptizing them, but
no, but you know what I mean, like soaking in a beautifully scented,
love that
fragrance with music and a glass of wine.
Yep, that's the way I heal, is from music and baths. Baths are, and I talk about that a lot in my book. So the healing waters, right? So yeah. Well, great.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you, Teresa, for making us aware of what survivor has to go through in order to begin to heal and heal, which is different, to begin to heal and heal. So thank you also to telling us and showing us how we can be healers. And certainly training is important, to be volunteer, to be in a program. But being trauma informed is a necessity to understand the survivors and be helpful, you know, to them. You know, we cannot just go, you know, and say, oh, I am going to help. That is not, you know, you are not going to succeed, and you are going to be also to be worse, to make them worse than they are. Yeah. So it's important, you know, to be trained to do this kind of ministry.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That, you know, thank you. You tell us so much, and you know what you are talking about.
I hope. It's a journey, you know. It's not I tell survivors it's not a destination. I'm not healed, right? It's something that you work on every day.
Yes, exactly. You know.